The first time I seriously thought about multi-hyphenate Leigh Whannell as a storyteller was while watching the fourth and hopefully final installment in the Insidious series, The Last Key. Whannell was making waves long before then, first as the co-creator of the wildly successful Saw franchise, and then writing every Insidious movie while also making his directorial debut with its third iteration. But none of them made me think about him in the way that a subplot from The Last Key did, specifically the one between his character, Specs, and Caitlin Gerard's, Imogen. Gerard is a conventionally attractive woman, and for no reason beyond that, Specs immediately begins coming on to her. The two have nothing in common and absolutely no chemistry, yet I knew that this awkward flirtation was going to work out for him. Not because it should, or because the narrative benefited in any way from it doing so, but because the man involved wrote the damn thing. And sure enough, Leigh Whannell gets the girl. It's not great. Nor is the fact that his sophomore directorial effort, Upgrade, begins with the fridging of discount Tom Hardy's wife, whose most defined personality trait is that she refers to him as husband. Of course, the movie that follows this terrible trope is really good, and although part of me wishes I could say that it ruined it for me, and how dare it, I love Upgrade a lot. I just wish that he hadn't done that. You know, it's the kind of thing that emphasizes a very male view of the world, which makes sense, but it also made me a little concerned when it was revealed that he would be modernizing the story of the Invisible Man into one about a woman's trauma. It's a compelling idea for a lot of reasons that we will get into, but I wasn't really convinced that he was the person to tell it. So I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that Whannell seemed to understand this, as he asked its star, the always excellent Elizabeth Moss, to offer recommendations on the script to make it more true to a woman's experience and minimize the inherent manness in his work. It was a good move, and I definitely think the film is better for it. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week I Review. You can call me a guy who has definitely thought about what he'd do if he were invisible. And today, I am talking about The Invisible Man, parentheses 2020. Of course, it's important to clarify that this is The Invisible Man 2020 because there have been so many takes on H.G. Wells's 1897 novel over the decades, starting with a 1933 film adaptation and then moving on to dozens of barely related stories about a person who is or can become invisible. But the latest entrant is the least similar of them all. First up, it's not really about the Invisible Man himself, and two, he's not invisible in the way that his predecessors were. Instead, this is the story of Cecilia Cass, the abused partner of Adrian Griffin, a pioneer in the field of optics and the title character. At the film's start, we see Cecilia slowly trying to escape from Adrian's enormous home. As she meets her sister on the road, clearly for the first time in a while, Adrian comes rushing up and punches straight through the car window, trying to keep her there. But they escape. And Cecilia goes to stay with James, a childhood friend and current police officer, as well as his daughter, Sydney. She is clearly traumatized by what Adrian did to her, not going outside and running from anything that reminds her of him. No one knew the extent to which he was hurting her, physically and emotionally, but they assure her that it's over. And then she learns he has killed himself, and she will be getting a whole lot of money for her troubles. Great, right? But, of course, Adrian hasn't died. This is merely a new way to get into her head to make her think that she's crazy and, more importantly, to make everyone else think so too. He haunts her so he can isolate her, either to ruin her life as punishment for leaving or a ploy to bring her back to him, or both. This haunting takes the form of some full-on paranormal activity shit, but it's important to note that if you have seen the trailers that inundated me in the weeks and months leading up to its release, there's actually a lot of footage there that isn't in the film. The big moment where James and Sydney come into the room and Cecilia is staring at a chair saying that someone is sitting in it, not in the movie. Nor is the floating iPhone, which, thank gosh, because that shot is just straight up ridiculous. But by and large, the filmmaking in The Invisible Man is extremely effective. Leigh Whannell has certainly been influenced by the James Wan school of horror, with slow, deliberate camera movements that will often turn to nothing at all. Though fortunately, these rarely end in jump scares. I was particularly unnerved by Steadicam movements throughout the locations that seemed to be POV, giving you a view of how Adrian might be watching Cecilia. But you can't really know, because even if the camera is turned straight on him, you can't see it. And that's the brilliance of the trick. You are brought into her paranoia, and I was constantly on edge, gripping the jacket I had in my hands to try to relieve some of that tension. There were a couple of moments where I convinced myself that I could just barely see the outline of a human form, but I honestly don't know if I was just imagining it. Horror films tend to be reflections of their time, and The Invisible Man does this in multiple ways. As with Upgrade, Whannell is interested in the evil implications of technology taken to its extremes. In that film, which invokes a certain type of horror but is not itself horror, an artificial intelligence implanted into the spine of a quadriplegic allows him to become effectively superhuman, something that brings him face to face with a violent gang of other post-humans who have modified themselves to become the ultimate mercenaries. But even they fall, and the incredibly bleak ending suggests that humanity is ultimately doomed in the face of its technological progress, yet we push ever forward. But the destruction of the human race by AI is a fairly abstract thing in a way that, say, the rise of digital surveillance and the resulting loss of privacy are not. And that's why the 2020 Invisible Man is not physically invisible, but has created a technology, a suit made of camera lenses that will no doubt give anyone with that phobia of small holes nightmares forever, does it for him, or anyone else who gets their hands on it. The technology is a secret at the time of the movie, but it's one that Adrian was likely on his way to selling, an act that would make him even more rich and powerful. And all of that is absolutely terrifying. But also, you don't need to be invisible to invisibly track or to harm someone. Early in the film, Cecilia is reading about how hackers can get into webcams without the person knowing, so she, like me and so many others, covers hers up. It's a small gesture, and ultimately a futile one. These little things that we do because we want to believe we have some measure of control. Cecilia tries to hide by staying with James, a person Adrian is ostensibly unaware of, but the letter informing her of Adrian's death comes to the address anyway. He knows. Of course he knows. There are any number of ways for him to track her, because at every moment of every day, we're all being watched, not by people, generally speaking, but algorithms. Anytime I go anywhere, a notification on my phone asks me how it was or wants me to answer a question that someone else has asked about it. If I took a picture while I was there, it might recommend that I post that too. Presumably, there is a way to stop all of this, but doing so would cut me off from all of the upsides of the technology, things that I have become reliant on over the years. And sure, I would love to delete Facebook because I hate it and it definitely makes me miserable. But I didn't actually have one until the week I graduated from college. And can you imagine not having any social media presence during college? The gatherings that I missed, both on campus and, more importantly, when I went back to my hometown, old friends would get together or go to the movies or whatever, and I wouldn't get invited. People didn't know I was there, and if I didn't think to actively text them, they're not going to actively text me. Making a Facebook group or event and just sending that blast out is easy. actively thinking about who might be missing is hard. And that was genuinely isolating in a time when I was going through a lot of change and stress and really needed more people than I had. And even if things have changed a lot as I've gotten older and there's less for me to be invited to, I don't really want to be removed from people again like that. I'm not going to say that my relationships with Facebook or Google are abusive or traumatizing, but when we're thinking about it in terms of the rarely subtle cinematic metaphors of the horror genre, I mean, there's a reason that this invisible man is part of the tech industry. But to get to that point, we have to go through the more literal, not even a metaphor, of how men hurt women. Deciding to call this movie The Invisible Man was likely a requirement from Universal Studios and Blumhouse, but it's also an encapsulation of what it means. Cecilia doesn't even get title credit in her own movie. It goes to her abuser. The man of it all cannot be ignored. The Invisible Man is a film about believing women when they say they're being stalked and attacked, and a society that doesn't do that. The President of the United States of America has been accused of assault by literally dozens of women, and yet 40-something% of voters don't believe them or just don't care. That same man goes on Twitter and television every single day and just lies about everything. About what's going on in the world, what other people are saying about what's going on in the world, about the things that he said 5 minutes before. And it doesn't matter. Because people believe that if he says it, it's true. What Cecilia experiences is real, but when she tries to explain it to people, they chalk it up to hysteria. Adrian does things to separate Cecilia from the support system that she has built up, and when she tries to fix it, no one believes that she wasn't the one to break it in the first place, even if it makes absolutely no sense that she would send that email or hit that person. No one stops to really consider it. It is simply taken as fact that she is the aggressor. Of course, it is difficult for us to hear that people in power are bad, that they hurt others in the past and continue to do so now. The news articles that were written about Adrian's suicide all lament the loss of a genius with so much left to give. And that's the really terrifying thing. Adrian didn't need to be invisible to control Cecilia. It just made things more fun. 8.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hamrain Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, @BlasianFMA, Magnolia Denton, and Elliot Fowler. If you like this video, it's great. If not, I'm sorry. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week.